Today I'm going to be talking about motivation and how to connect with motivation, and in this way we can access our processing abilities. So relaxing, enjoying, indulging, supported to chill, fairness, equity, justice, solving, figuring it out, inherent motivations that we have. Feeling light, anti-gravity, buoyant, releasing weight, to be on time, fully completed, ready and able, to control emotions and sensitivities and hurts and the affect, to be kind and forgiving, open and humble, progress versus regress, to make peace with my mistakes and survival tactics, to get confirmation and assurance that I am helpful and useful, to let my mind be in a state of temple, in the temples, that it feels like a temple, focusing on myself instead of disappearing, have people mature enough to rely on and be direct, that, in other words, my discernment on people's qualities and character is accurate. And once I'm in line with my motivations, and I encourage anyone to write out theirs, it only takes a minute and a half to read, but it could take hours to write them out. Then we can start to process sort of the underlying stuff. And I want to bring up the word memory, which has the word in Hebrew mayim, and uri, which kind of means mayim. If you would, the sounds of the words all matter. So mayim uri, which sounds like memory. Mayim means water, and uri means my light, or mine light. So water, light, mine. It's kind of like the memory is the water. The water carries a memory. It's hydrogen and oxygen matching up, but in the water is a lot of materials. I'm not going to use the word contaminations, but I'll say residues, remnants, little tiny other particles that connect. It's very rare for any of us to be exposed to pure distilled water. That's totally, and even then, in that case, there's many other layers of really, let's say in a scientific experiment, being able to use pure water. So our memories are the light which shine forward for us. So if we're using our own light, the water, to flow, it's kind of like the water either can remind us of the times when we were all the way up to our nose. In Judaism, we say Nachshon ben Aminadab, the one before the sea split, he climbed in and he kept walking and the sea didn't split till he still had faith. He had just nostrils sticking out for breath, just like this. And yet he still trusted that the miracle would occur that his creator had promised. And so that's kind of the idea of the light. That trust is based on something that came before, so that I could right now be available to going above and beyond what is right in front of me. Another aspect of this is filling in when we feel really dried out and they're so thirsty. It may not be for water. What I mean is really like a deep thirst, like for love, for warmth, for affection. It doesn't matter what it is, but that sense of being dried out, too much exposure, too raw, and needing that soothing. So the memories themselves are very powerful. And so I want to process like some things that have to do with this, like out loud together, so we could look at how when we're in our motivation we can process. Before I do that, I'll give some information. So I've shared the motivations, and then now I'll share like some aspects of processing, and then I'll share some areas of which that I processed. So the back body is how we release the chakras. They're like these wheels of energy, and they're sort of like we're able to unplug them from the back when they're overly cycling. And there's this idea of Mashiach that many people are exposed to. For example, the Jewish Rabbi Kanievsky, who passed away recently, said last year around Passover time that Mashiach has already arrived, the Messianic consciousness, and it's just about us, being ready. And then some who say that Jesus is the Messiah, and then, the Savior, the Redeemer, the Son of David. But really, what we could say is that everybody will know the one who created them. So this, by the word of God, heavens were made, and by his breath, all the hosts. So the spirit, which is like the water, always moving, always changing, it's always recombining, rejuvenating, like the juve, right? Comes into being, and then by the word, the vibration, it's the physicals, it's the heavens, right? So the refracting ray shows the mirror as a window. In other words, let's look at the light again. Like what we see in front of us is like the rear view mirror. Objects may appear larger, objects may be larger than they appear. So we may reduce or make bigger. It's like we see in front of us what came before us because we're looking into a mirror. There's like a silver paint. So God has created this opaqueness where we see like a lens, like there's something that could bounce back. And so the creator of heaven and all the hosts, the ones who could host the vibration, sound vibration, could be that we could hold the messianic spark already if we have it. So it's really all about aligning God as the mother, as when we hurt each other, hurtness and vulnerability, the power struggle and the anger, it's kind of a way of acting with the other, the mother, right? So whoever you're turning into your other, I have a partner where this happens often, like, or I would say somebody close to me, like a partner in the work, and it's like, how would this person be if they were my mother? Like, how much compassion can I have for my own mother is how much compassion we can have for the one who made us. And also our spirit, the spirit mother, like the one whose spirit is being separated into many different beings who don't know each other. So that's the messianic spark of deeply connecting with the spirit source, but also with the physical source, like the vulnerability of being flesh, and connecting with all as being vulnerability of being flesh, like being operators of the flesh, and then at the same time being the spirit, which doesn't recognize everyone else as the same spirit often. So there's this lower unity, which is the time, which is, it takes time to recognize, and then there's this higher unity, which is forever. It's like the unseparated space, like that all matter comes from the same recombinations, for example, the water aspect. And everything arises from the code. I would say what I grew up, the lineage is 22 letters into 10 utterances. And the pronunciation matters. Like I said, you could say the word mayim uri from the word memory, because even with Greek into English, like the substitutions are okay because you could use different letters to make the same sounds. And it's true because when you talk to a dog and you say, "You're so stupid and you're a horrible dog," the dog looks at you, "Really? Thank you." Like, but if you say to the dog, "You are a good boy and I love you," the dog's going to still think you're not saying those, and it's going to cower away and say, "What have I done wrong?" So we know this, and we know this from when we're children. And so everything derives life force from these vibrations of combinations that open the gates. Now, if you would combine every sound of the 22, 1 with 2, and then 1 with 3, and then 1 with 4, and then 1 with 5, and then 1 with 6, and then 1 with 7, and 1 with 8. If you would go through all the gates, like, through that way, you can also go backwards, but basically there's 231 pairs of these gates. So you want to go backwards or forwards, it's a pair, but there's 231 of these gates, pairs of gates. Or even directly from the letters themselves, there's energy that comes. And this is the vibration. And once we're in we're the host of the vibration, or we're the vibration itself. And this is like the emanation from the sustainer. So the sustainer, the creator is the sustainer. So from this emanating from the creation, life form is coming and flowing and opening. From the stream of the original stream, there's new flow coming in. And these letters become clothed in creation. And eventually in corporeal time-space, where there's change occurring. And that can only happen over time or space. You get from point A to point B, or you get from time A to time B. So there's a line that has a point and another point, and the line is what connects them. So the change is what happens once we're in the physical form. So it's saying that these emanations from the source of sound or vibration can allow us to live in kind of the state of being of oneness, and that's what the messianic consciousness is. So water, I've been speaking of water, so I'll say water and gravity, for example, are from nothing. They interact. So water is these, like water and gravity, which both come from no thing. Even if you believe in a Big Bang or whatever words you like to use, there was a point where water had to start congealing with itself. started relating to itself, not as other, but as itself. And from there, we see a lot of life coming. So, and gravity keeps it all together also. So this combination of forces all come from, like I said, they arise from the 22 letters of the code and all the combinations. But in this case, it's not just a written code, it's a spoken code. And it can be divided into 10 utterances, which can therefore cause all life form to yield from and of itself into more and more refined separation beings, which can now be said to be, this is corporeal, this is life in a form, this is a life form. So now I'll process personal things that I'll start with saying it's easier to use one piece. And I went really deep into it, my memory, and I looked at every aspect of it, my reflections and the feelings, and I let it be flowing and recombining in the moment. And I received a lot of information. What I used was the fact that my father sat for hours at the table with me on the Sabbath while my sisters got to play, forcing me to be on my day off from school and all my other stresses to eat a stew, a Jewish stew called cholent. I didn't want it. And it was possible I didn't want to eat the meat, but it's also possible that it was a food that, because of the tradition, it had to cook overnight. So it was very brown, very thick, very unappetizing to me, and I would gag. So for many hours, he would sit there enjoying his books, and I would sit there, probably 6 years old, approximately 6, very, very frozen. And with a learned helplessness, I couldn't rebel. I couldn't go play, and I couldn't just do whatever I wanted at the table. He was waiting for me to eat this now cold food for hours. Finally, he would go and pray in the synagogue, and either my mother would tell him I ate it, or I would eat a few bites, or something. I'd manage to get it down. I'd wrap up little pieces in bread after the end of the meal. I was so not hungry, but I would wrap it up in bread so I could eat it. It's like a kind of force feeding. But then one Saturday night, and it would get worse and worse week by week. Finally, there was one Saturday night he got back from the prayers, and he saw that it was in the garbage. And my mother had said, look, we'll just try it. Let's just throw it away. It's too crazy. When he got back, he saw it was in the garbage. He put the garbage on my bed. And my mother, changed the linen for me. I didn't say that it was her that threw it away. But she didn't defend me. And my mother finally asked the outside source, like a rabbi of the community, if he could explain to my father that it actually is a tradition and it's not something that is worth the war with his own child, to force me for hours to now resent kosher, to resent Sabbath. And I felt that I have had to do a lot of work because of this, healing Shabbat, healing my relationship with the Sabbath, with resting and rebelling and with what's sacred. And instead I was rebelling and disrespecting sacredness for so long because of what was modeled to me, and healing the choosing which foods I want to put inside my body to feel control. And oftentimes I recognized that I used to choose isolation in order to avoid feeling excluded. I would choose to just take myself away. And I still do this sometimes in order to not have to run the risk of being excluded by somebody more powerful than me from being with the ones I want to play with, my sisters. And I realized what I needed was the freedom to choose, like I said, what enters my body, but also understanding that I'm different and I have autonomy, even though I'm only 6 years old, to accept my preferences, to respect my desire not to put this into me, which felt very unappetizing. And it wasn't because I was, I'm not saying that someone shouldn't eat something that they don't like sometimes, but, medicine or health, but I'm saying that it was at the end of the meal. I wasn't hungry, and it was because of a power struggle. And I would have felt like a human instead of an object, which is what I really craved. What this helps me is to recognize that I deserve to be defended also and supported when I'm being a victim or bullied. And I didn't know that because of what was happening. There was nobody to support me. My mother was also part of the power struggle. She didn't have much of a voice or a right. And I recognized that I've been worthy all along of compassion, even though I started to believe I wasn't, or that it's hard work to be cared about. For someone to care about me is too much work, my needs. And so a lot of my practice has been attention and presence. Brings me to feel validated and makes me feel understood and real. Like I look at myself and I make it real, and I watch and I see, not that it wasn't real, but I make what I'm denying real. I let it be what it is. And this encourages me, as per my motivations, to be more in line with my true motivations. I want to rest more and observe more and enjoy company more and see the beauty more. And I'm going to run through my motivations again now, and you're going to see how this kind of practice of learning about how we process and also what we're carrying, and also, obviously had to arrive back into our motivations by in real life work. So my motivations, again, it only takes a minute and a half to read, is to relax and enjoy and indulge and be supported to chill. Fairness, equity, justice, solving, having it all, figuring it out. Feeling light and anti-gravity buoyant, releasing the weight. To be on time, fully completed, ready, and able. To control emotions and sensitivities and hurts and my affect, like how I appear. To be kind and forgiving, open and humble. Progress, not regress. To make peace with my mistakes and my survival tactics. To get confirmation and assurance that I'm helpful and useful. To let my minds be a temple in my two temples. To focus on the temples, To focus on myself instead of trying to disappear, and to have people mature enough to rely on and be direct with. And I wish you a beautiful day. Thank you for being with this.